This is the second part of your lecture on the introduction to anatomy and physiology. So we already talked briefly about what you're covering in lab. We looked at what is anatomy, how it's the shape of the structures, and we talked briefly about what is physiology, which is the function, and how those two work in conjunction with each other. And then we talked about why some of these things that we learn about in anatomy matter and what are the membranes that protect our visceral organs. So those organs that are contained within our body. This last part we're going to talk about is something called homeostasis. Homeostasis is key and will be brought up over and over and over again throughout AMP1, AMP2, and your entire careers, because homeostasis is key in survival. If you remember, it is one of the things that determines that you be alive. You need to be able to respond to things and maintain your body within a certain limit. So it has to do with the ability to react to stimuli, and it has to be with the ability to be able to obtain and use nutrients. Okay. So our body is always trying to maintain itself within certain limits. For instance, your blood sugar shouldn't be too high, but it shouldn't be too low either. If it's too high, that's very bad, usually known as diabetes. If it's too low, that can be very bad and can actually lead to something called a diabetic coma. So you need to maintain your blood sugar level always within a certain limit. Same goes for your blood pressure, for your levels of sodium in the blood, for the level of water in your body, etc., etc. So how does your body do this? This is what we're going to look at here in this part. Now, please pay good attention to this because students have a lot of trouble understanding homeostasis. And homeostasis is key to survival, to avoiding disease, and to be able to maintain yourself alive. And this goes for any organism. So the way our body maintains homeostasis is through something called positive and negative feedback. Okay? Positive and negative feedback. Please understand this is not a good thing or a bad thing. Neither. Positive here does not mean good. Negative here does not mean bad. This is not what it's referring to. Negative refers to opposite. Positive refers to a reinforcement of something. Okay. Both of them are necessary for maintaining homeostasis in your body. Both of them are done in your body on a daily basis. Both serve to keep you alive. Positive is like in this image here. More. You're adding more, a positive reinforcement to increase the output. Negative is the opposite. What can we do to counteract this? Something is high, you bring it low. Something is too low, you bring it up. So let's look at examples of this. A key example of thinking about negative feedback, and one that actually doesn't have to do with the human body, is the thermostat in your house. So the thermostat in your house does something called negative feedback, which is where if it's cold outside, right, then the temperature in your house might drop a little. And because if the temperature drops and you have your thermostat set at 70 degrees Fahrenheit and the temperature just dropped down to 69 or 68, what's going to happen is that in your house, the heater is going to kick in and it's going to start warming up the house, right? So something happened and went below the temperature that's registered by the thermostat. It causes the heater to kick in. The heater starts to warm up your house to bring your house back to set point. Once it reaches set point, it stops. If the temperature goes down again, it does the whole process all over again. The opposite happens in the summer. It gets too hot outside. So you have your set temperature at 70 degrees. The temperature goes up to 72 degrees. What kicks on this time is going to be your air conditioner instead of the heater. Until it brings your house back down to 70, the air conditioner cuts off. You're at set point. And then once the temperature goes too high again, the whole process starts over. This is negative feedback. You're doing the opposite. Temperature too high, I do something to bring down the temperature. Temperature is too low, I do something to bring up the temperature. Negative feedback. Doesn't mean bad, it means opposite. Here's an example of the negative feedback, in the human body. This one is an example of shivering. So when it's cold outside and you walk outside, your body temperature might start to decrease a little. Immediately, your body needs to have a response because you can't have your body temperature too low or it can kill you. So the way it might respond is to cause you to start to shiver. When you start to shiver, you're actually moving, contracting your muscles a lot, those skeletal muscles, which start to produce heat, thereby increasing the temperature of your body to bring it back to set point. Once it comes back to set point, stop shivering. If the temperature goes down again, you start shivering all over again, just like the thermostat. Right. Again, negative feedback is not bad. It just means opposite. The opposite thing is going to be done to maintain homeostasis. In the case of positive feedback, this is where you're going to increase the stimulus or the output. You're going to increase it instead of doing the opposite effect. Why might you need something like this in your body? Well, a good example of that would be for blood clotting. So if you were to get injured, you say you're riding your bike and you fall down and you scrape your hand or you cut yourself pretty bad while cutting some potatoes in the kitchen, you don't want to bleed out. So your body is going to immediately have an over-exaggerated reaction, a positive feedback. It quickly needs to send blood to the area because blood will help remove any possible debris that has entered and any possible pathogen like bacteria that could enter through that open wound in your skin. Quickly needs to send blood to that area, but you don't want to bleed out, so you need to immediately start to swell and to clot the blood in that area to make like a little stopper so that you don't bleed out. As you start to clot, it lets your body know that you're clotting and that the blood is getting stopped up there, which causes your body to send even more clotting factor, and that continues until you form a nice blockage right there so that you don't bleed out. So it's an effect that keeps increasing. Oh, we started clotting. Oh, let's clot more. Let's clot more. Let's clot more until we reach what we needed to reach, and then there we just stop. Okay. So positive feedback is an enhanced effect to get to something you need to get to. Another example in the body would be fever. Okay. If you're sick, one of the things that you can do is your body might have a fever to help reduce the possibility of bacteria or viruses to be able to replicate. It can help slow them down and give your body time to fight that infection. So one of the things that your body does is it gives you a fever. When you get a fever, you actually get cold instead of hot. You start to feel really cold, which doesn't make sense because your body is actually a good 4 to 6 degrees hotter than it should be. But your body is tricking you into thinking that you're cold so that you start shivering, which increases your body temperature even more. And then you start getting sleepy, and then you start grabbing a bunch of blankets, and then you lie down covered in blankets while shivering, all increasing your body temperature to give your body time to fight that infection. But as soon as infection is fought, your fever just breaks and everything can go back to normal. Again, positive feedback, enhancing the effect more and more. Negative feedback, doing the opposite. If the effect is increasing something, you reduce it. If the effect is reducing something, you increase it. All right. The last example that I'm going to put here is about childbirth. And what this has to do is with labor. So when labor begins, you have the baby's head stretching the cervix. This is the stimulus that is felt in this specific example of positive feedback. There's the stimulus, the baby's head stretching the cervix. This sends message to your brain, which is your control center, And then your control center, your brain, sends a feedback. It sends a message to the uterus telling it, which is the effector, telling that uterus to start producing a hormone called oxytocin. And this oxytocin then stimulates uterine contractions so that those muscles of your uterus will actually start to contract. And that is your response. So the stimulus the baby's had, the brain then tells the uterus to produce oxytocin, which causes contractions, which is the response. And then this causes your cervix to start to dilate and your uterus to contract more and more and more. So during labor, you start to contract that uterus, but then you send out more oxytocin to increase the contractions, more oxytocin, and the contractions keep increasing until you dilated that cervix enough so that you can push that baby out of the body. The second the baby is pushed out of your body, your uterine contractions stop. It's like an automatic switch right there. It just stops. So that signal is being amplified over and over and over again till you achieve what you need to achieve. In this case, getting that baby out of your body. That's your example for childbirth. Sometimes a woman, for one reason or another, is not able to produce enough oxytocin to get the baby out, or is not producing oxytocin at the right time, and the baby needs to be removed a little bit earlier, or the mother is past due date. We need to get that baby out. In which case, the hospitals use something called Pitocin, which is a synthetic form of oxytocin. You can inject it intravenously into the person to stimulate uterine contractions so that it will initiate that positive feedback. All right. There are a few common misconceptions about homeostasis. I'm going to mention a few of these. These are covered in your book as well. So the first common misconception, and one that I've already mentioned several times, is that negative feedback is bad for the body while positive feedback is good. That's not true. Neither one is good, neither one is bad. Or, in other words, both of them are good. There are ways of maintaining homeostasis. Both things just maintain homeostasis. The words negative and positive are just referring to the direction of the output. If I am increasing the direction of the output in only one direction, that's called positive. If I am changing the direction of the output to the opposite way, that is called negative feedback. The second misconception is that the body's ability to maintain homeostasis means that the body is static or unchanging. You are always in homeostasis. That is not correct. You constantly need to maintain homeostasis. This is a constant process. If I eat, my system needs to undergo a lot of physiological processes to digest that food. And then sugar is going to hit my bloodstream, and then I need to do lots of processes to maintain that sugar level, the sodium level, etc., etc. So these changes are constantly occurring, and then you always have constant responses to the different stimuli in your body. So your body is constantly undergoing negative and positive feedback to maintain homeostasis. The third misconception is that these feedback loops, that positive and negative feedback, are like an on and off switch. You turn it on and then you just turn it off. And that is not necessarily true. In reality, it's a dynamic system that is involved in various degrees. So you might have negative feedback. Your blood sugar went up, but it only goes up a little bit, so you only need to reduce it a little bit. Your blood sugar goes up a lot, you need to reduce it a lot. So this is not just an on and off switch. This is actually very variable. It's a constant process, and they're both required and necessary for your body to maintain homeostasis. Please look over this. I added some videos for you in your Blackboard course as well. And feel free to look up videos on homeostasis online as well to better understand this concept.